This is Love Life, and I'm Dr. Babe. Today is all about how we express ourselves through love, passion, and sexuality. Our topic today is modern dating and relationships. Relationships have evolved tremendously over the centuries, from the intention of economic and political networking, polygamy, and domestic partnerships. Most traditional relationships were historically sought out for security, convenience, companionship, and social standing. But nowadays, relationships are being deferred or even passed over for attempts to find true love with a soulmate. Aziz Ansari talks about this in his book, Modern Romance, which has now been adapted into a Netflix series, Master of None. Definitely worth looking up. I have a feeling today's show is going to be epic. Not only do we have two of Cayman's most interesting people, but this is my absolute favorite topic. We are definitely going to be talking openly about some taboo topics today, all in the spirit of embracing our humanity. Our guests today are Natasha Casebolt and Todd Hazelwood. Let's see what they have to say on Love Life.
This is Bella. She was dumped after being overbred for years.
One dog like Bella can produce up to 18 puppies a year.
In the Cayman Islands, over 600 cats and dogs were killed last year due to an uncontrolled pet population.
CARE provides free surgeries to cats and dogs to be spayed or neutered and vaccinated.
Become part of the solution and book your pet's free surgery through CARE.
Contact CARE 938-2273.
We're back here on Love Life, and here are my guests, Natasha Casebolt and Todd Hazelwood. Your last names are like so similar, I get a little tongue-tied. So how are you guys today? I really wanted to bring you on to talk about this sort of big topic of like modern dating and where it's at, but tell us a little bit about yourselves and where you're at and how you got to this place in your life.
I've been on island for about 10 years, and the dating life here is obviously very hit and miss. And I'm currently in a relationship. I've had a boyfriend for almost 4 years, and things are going really good. And I feel definitely every relationship you're in, you learn a little something new, and it adds to the next relationship and the next relationship. So I feel pretty comfortable where I'm at right now, and I'm pretty happy, and feel that I'm definitely winning in that situation right now.
Yeah, and I think that personal experience really brings a lot of content that we can discuss today. Just that growth. I mean, we all do learn a lot from every relationship that we're in, but also what you do for a living. I'm sure you see a lot and you hear a lot of other people's business. So that might be helpful for us today.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And what about for you, Todd?
So I've been here 12 years. Definitely been in and out of relationships, and I've been single for the last couple of years. So navigating the landscape of the dating world has been interesting and eye-opening, and it has changed. Since I've been here, technology has made dating very interesting, and it keeps you on your toes for sure.
No doubt. So, what is modern dating like? How would you describe it? Just sort of generally, what's your first impression of what things are? Make the assessment for modern dating.
I don't know. It's weird. I feel like it changes as you get older, definitely, depending on the situation that you're in. But living on this island, obviously, was probably very different from, living in the States or Canada or somewhere like that. I don't feel like there's a whole lot of actual dating, or at least when I was younger, it was more just like going out to a bar, having some fun with somebody, and hooking up a few times, and if it works out, then you're like, oh, you see each other a lot more. It turns into a relationship, and I think that's kind of how it is right now, at least here.
It's definitely changed. I think, I remember my first girlfriend, and we dated long distance, and I actually wrote hand letters and sent her in the mail with a stamp on the envelope, right? And so, now I think you've got the ability to keep in touch with people over distances, and I think there's a lot less taboos than there used to be. I mean, you can, age difference is not a huge thing as much as it used to be. And so, I think it opens things up a lot for people in the dating scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of issues there when we talk about technology, perhaps even the dating apps that are available. I mean, Tinder is like a controversial one that I think people joke about mostly, but I don't know if you have a particular opinion about those things, if they're helpful or if they hurt the whole process of dating. What do you think?
I have actually never used Tinder or experienced Tinder, but I actually do have a friend who used to live here and went away on rollover and was hanging out in Miami and used Tinder and met up with a few girls, and I always thought it was like a one-night stand thing. Again, I don't really know much about it, but he actually has been in a relationship with one of the ladies that he found on it for almost like 5 months now, and it seems to be going really well. So
Success story.
I don't know, you know?
Tinder's interesting, but you've got to realize that there's so many more. There's Bumble, there's Happen, there's so many. There's apps for having threesomes, there's apps for just hooking up. There's so many different things out there, and it's like going to a bar, but then you can actually know it. What every face has a name and has a background and has more than one photo, and so you can actually like look on a menu and see what you want without having to have that hit and miss interaction where you go and talk to somebody and you can't stand them and it was a waste of time. You can actually go through and look and say, oh, there's one. Let me find out more about them. Let me chat with them first and see if it's somebody that I actually want to continue to talk to before you even meet.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there are some success stories in using these apps, depending on what your intention is. And I think it's about lining up with another person who has the same intention of using these kinds of mediums of finding people. But I guess on the downside, when it comes to these dating apps, do you feel like there's a lot more of objectification of people into more sexual objects and perpetuating that whole hookup phenomenon of sort of reducing the relationship to a sexual, maybe temporary relationship versus something that's more emotional, more authentic?
I think it's more, what does each person want?
Yeah.
If somebody really just wants a hookup and somebody else does, then it's a great way for them to meet. And it's a great way also to suss out what each person wants. I think for a lot of people, physical appearance is important. And so for them to go through and be able to identify somebody that they know they're already attracted to, it makes it easier for them. And it can be considered objectification, but for each person, it depends on what is important to them. If somebody doesn't care about physical appearance, they could just look at the profile, for example, and see what is the person interesting. So it opens things up, I think.
I think that it would be a little bit hard because I think that a lot of stuff gets lost without the physical interaction to begin with, right? What it is that you're looking for can get lost or misread. Just like, when you're having a fight over text message or something, like you can take the tones in different ways or, interpret it in different ways. So I think, and there's probably a lot of BS out there too, a lot of people lying. And so I think it's one of those things that you have to be really smart about or know how to weed out what you don't want there.
There's definitely people out there that are putting pictures up that don't really look like them in
or you
real
could lie
life.
about everything if you wanted.
Yeah.
Is where when you talk to somebody, you could actually pick up on, there's a lot with human interaction that is a tell-all.
Energy, vibe.
Yeah.
Last week we talked a little bit about masculine and feminine energies, and it's interesting because men being sort of stereotyped as the ones that want more sexual interaction. I was wondering if you agree with that, or if you feel like there are women who are equally interested in expressing themselves sexually out there.
I think that nowadays, because it's more acceptable for a man or a woman to be more like a man, and they're coming out of their shells and they're just as powerful and just as strong, and so I feel like they're just as aggressive in that retrospect as men are these days, and they can feel more open about it because they're not so judged. I mean, there still is definitely women get judged a lot harder than men, but I feel like they're more confident in coming out and being able to be open with that.
Before I get to your opinion, Todd, we do have to take a break, so we'll be right back. Stick with us, and we'll talk more about this topic.
Because we want to know where we came from.
Because I love the things that can only be found in Cayman.
Because it's our paradise.
So why should we protect K-Man?
Because if we don't, who will?
Help us protect our legacy. Join the National Trust today.
Welcome back. We're talking about modern dating and relationships with Natasha and Todd today. And Todd, I cut you off before you could really give your ideas on what basically the sexes and the genders. What are their differences in expressing themselves in the dating world? Do you feel like women are just as sexual as men?
I think it's definitely changed. I think society is more open to women being sexual and expressing that. But like Natasha said, it's still not the same. You know, back to Tinder, it's women are on there a lot, and sometimes just to hook up. I mean, in Cayman, it's very interesting here, where you can swipe through and you'll see, you know, oh, there's my ex, and oh, well, there's somebody I work with, and oh, there's my friend's girlfriend. Wait, why is my friend's girlfriend? But women do that for, you know, whatever needs they may have.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I have to admit that I actually gave a speech to a school, like a whole auditorium full of children, about sexual exploitation and the dangers of using these apps and like sending nude pictures. And then afterwards I was like, wait a minute, I don't actually know directly what these are like because I've never been on one. So I decided to sign up for Tinder and see what it was like. So I ran this little experiment and it was quite interesting. What you find, the conversations you have. And, you know, I feel like now I can speak from personal experience, so I think that makes it a better a way to explain what it's like. But I think you're right. Both of you have both elements to it. So there can be success stories where people meet and have like successful relationships where they're happy and they get what they want out of it. And there are relationships that are just meant to be temporary. And people are happy with that too. But I've also heard some pretty scary stories about Tinder.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to honesty in your communication, right? In terms of relationships. If somebody wants something short term and the other person also does, if you communicate that with each other and you can be honest about it, I think it can work. But it's, you know, in a lot of cases, there's dishonesty or somebody wants something but doesn't communicate it. And I think that's where it fails.
And I think there's another topic that I'd like to just throw out there that relates to this, the hooking up sort of phenomenon. Is it the same or similar to the idea of friends with benefits? Because that was something new that you know, I learned about. And to me, I mean, I think friends with benefits can be tricky because you might not know what you're getting into. It might be one person's way of, or what one person is looking for, but maybe not what the other person is looking for. So I think you're right, with honesty and communication, it's so important to put that out there.
Yeah, I feel like with friends with benefits, though, your intentions can get out of control. Like, you know, we always call it, one of you guys always catch a case.
A feeling, right?
You end up catching feelings as much as you want to keep everything just casual, and, you know, they're a good friend and they're attractive, and you want to have, you know, someone you still want to be sexually active, but you're not really looking to go out and, you know, get dirty. So, you know, you have friends that you want to hook up with, but eventually somebody always wants something more. It's just bound to happen, especially when they are friends, you know? So it's really hard to keep that line drawn. It's a very fine line, so that's pretty hard.
Yeah, and do you have any tips, either of you, of maybe someone who's looking for that, like how to keep it, I don't know, intentional?
Well, you know, if you're friends with somebody, there's obviously, you know, you have a connection with another person. And then to add friends with benefits means that you're also physically attracted to that person. And it can work, I think, but it's obviously a short-term solution.
Short-term.
It's not something long-term that will work. And again, it goes back to communicating. And as long as you're both, you know, on the same page in terms of what you want and talk about everything. You know, one thing you should talk about is, well, what if I meet somebody? You know, everyone's okay with that if I meet somebody that I want to date. And then your friends with benefits is over. And as long as everyone knows that, then, you know, no one's feelings are hurt.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is that if you're able to find someone that you can communicate with, which I think is sort of the hardest part, is to find someone on your same level that you can have that intellectual, mature conversation with, and then sort of put that out there and establish those boundaries of the relationship, that can be a successful relationship even if it's short term.
Exactly.
Because I think sometimes we assume that successful and healthy relationships are only the ones that lead to long-term relationships, serious, steady, possibly domestic partnerships or marriage, but that's not necessarily what is successful to those people.
No, it's successful as long as it doesn't end badly.
Yeah.
It can end in disaster. You can lose a friend. You can hurt. People's feelings can be hurt, and so it's. I wouldn't say it's something that has a high success rate in that case, but it can be successful.
I agree with that. It's hard to find. There's always somebody who gets hurt.
And what about if we sort of move it along to open relationships? I don't know how friends with benefits would fit in with that, or if it's just a totally different concept, but what is your take on open relationships, and how can we find success in those types of relationships?
I think, again, it goes back to communication. If you're in a relationship with someone, what your relationship is how you define it. It's not how everyone outside of you defines it. It could be what society thinks a relationship is, and that's two people that are monogamous and they do X, Y, and Z, and they live together and everything that they think it should be. But if you're in a interpersonal relationship with another human being, how you define your relationship is what it is. And if you communicate with that other person and you say, an example of an open relationship, I would like to do X. And are you okay with that? And if they're okay with that, if that's something they want to do, you have an agreement in place. And as long as everyone sticks to that agreement and the honesty and communication is there, then it can work.
But how hard is that to be honest about your inner desires and your, the things that a lot of people keep private? To have that level of relationship with someone where you're transparent about the thoughts and feelings and desires that you want to act out. I mean, I think that's so hard to find.
You do. You have to open yourself to somebody in order to communicate that, and that's not an easy thing to do.
But I think there are some misconceptions about maybe what open relationships are and how they compare to. Now I've heard a lot about polygamous relationships or polyamory, those types of relationships, and I guess that's a form of open relationships too. But I have talked to people who are happy. So I think maybe there's still a lot of myths and misunderstandings about these various types of relationships, and we're not going to get to them today, but I think having the conversation is the first part. So we will stop and take a break, but come back and join us for this conversation on love life.
Hey, you ain't got no time to lose, 'cause life is way too short. No matter what happens next, live life in pursuit of happiness. Let no one put you down. There are worse things in life, so don't you come and tell me anything. Never stop, never give it up. No stress, just live it up. Enjoy your life. Life is fine. Never stop, never give it up. Have faith no matter what's up. The world is fine, fine, fine. Use all your qualities. Taste your own diversity. Even though my world's a mess, I clean it up and then do all the rest. I take the first step. Oh yeah. You gotta believe in yourself, because no one is about to do it for you. Anything. Never stop, never give it up. No stress, just live it up. Enjoy your life.
"20 reasons to attend the International College of the Cayman Islands" in 20 seconds.
Job promotion.
Night classes.
Challenging.
Affordable tuition.
Brilliant professors.
Business. Friendly environment.
Accounting.
Finance.
Liberal arts.
Leadership. Broadcasting. Enthusiasm. orgasm,
New career.
Associate.
Bachelor's, internship,
diversity.
40-year history.
Hey, that's only 19 reasons.
We're internationally accredited.
Yes, cut.
Welcome back to Love Life, and we're here with Todd and Natasha. We were talking about open relationships, but another form of that, I guess, at least I would think, is swingers. Explain what that is. How does that work?
I think it could be a lot of things.
I love it. You guys are like my experts in all this stuff.
Yeah, it could be a lot of things. Swingers are, a couple that likes to go out and, partake in sexual activity with either other couples or other people, which as long as, obviously that's just an extension of that couple's relationship. I feel like as long as you have a good relationship and a solid relationship with somebody, something like that is okay. And, if it works for everybody involved, it can be amazing. If the relationship isn't super solid, then there can be a lot of trouble in it.
Almost like everything else we've been talking
everything
about.
else, yeah. It's all.
What do you think, Todd?
I mean, I think when you're talking about open relationships, swingers, it's like, what's the difference? It's all, again, about what your relationship is with that person and what you guys define it as. And, I think the term is very, it's got a negative connotation. Yeah. But I think people participate it, broadly. And again, as long as you're communicating, you're avoiding the jealousy issues and being honest about your feelings. It's something that can happen, but yeah, I don't see much difference between that and open relationship and the whole swingers thing.
They're all labels.
Yeah.
I think probably coming from a marriage and family therapy background, a lot of it is about relationships that get stale, relationships that are unfulfilling in the bedroom, and maybe that's sort of the catalyst that people will use to bring this conversation up in their relationship. Not necessarily that they have to be married, but any type of long-term relationship that does get stale or is unfulfilling in the bedroom. You need to talk about that. You need to talk about sexual intimacy and your needs and not be embarrassed about it. And I think the positive is that if you have that type of relationship with your partner where you can bring this up, that takes a lot of courage, and being able to sort of bank on the foundation of the relationship and explore these ideas, even if you don't act on them. Just the process of talking about them is really healthy, and you can grow together as a couple. I think it's the people that sort of do what they want on the side and then pretend that they're not doing anything.
Dishonesty.
Right, exactly. The dishonesty, the cheating. That's when the relationships fall apart, or if they don't, then that's unfair to the other partner who's being betrayed. So, yeah, I mean, I think I can see how there's pros and cons to all of these, and I think that we need to talk about it. But when you said that there's some negative connotation to swingers, what do you mean by that?
I mean, it goes back to society's views about,
what a relationship should be.
Yeah, and women can be slut-shamed, and women can be, looked down upon for being sexual, and being in an open relationship or being a swinger, is how it's labeled, it has a negative connotation for being promiscuous for either party, and people think it's weird, and people think that it shouldn't be done, and they look down on it, and that's how it gets a negative connotation.
I feel like not always is exploring that option in a relationship has to be because maybe the sexual, part of the relationship is going stale. It could just be like a new adventure. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of times if it's done right, it makes the relationship stronger. It's like a new thing that you're overcoming and a new kind of fantasy that you could have. But I don't think it necessarily has to be because something is stale or, not there. But again, like he said, I mean, it's all about people's perception about it. And, what's right for some people may not be right for other people.
Yeah, good point. I mean, everyone's going to be different. You're going to have more traditional people that are just conservative and only want a monogamous relationship for eternity. And there are people that are, fall somewhere in the middle or on the other extreme. And I think knowing that there's a niche for each of those things for every person, gives you some sense of freedom. And also the fact that a lot of people have to hide, their choices. I think that does a lot of damage psychologically to people. And so having this kind of forum where we can talk about it and say, I accept you for who you are, because really it's none of my business what you do.
To each their own.
Exactly.
They want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
If they do it in
private.
It
doesn't hurt you.
Yeah. I
what
think,
does it matter?
I think couples that do crossword puzzles together are weird. But you know what? If you want to do that in private, that's your thing.
Exactly.
Speaking of couples, you did mention you were single, right?
Yes.
So what's it like being single right now? Is that something you want to stay single, or you're trying to?
I mean, I play it by ear. It's interesting. I really value my freedom. I value not being held accountable to anybody but myself. I like to do what I want, and and you get into relationships, and that will change a lot of times. So, in terms of just my everyday life, I think that's important. I don't mind a monogamy thing. I think if you have a good sex life, that's fine. That's great. But if the other aspects of relationships can wear you down in terms of the freedoms that you may lose.
Okay, so I hope people are listening to this. I think you can have a lot of fun when you're single, but you make a good point. Sometimes when you focus on yourself and your freedom and just being accountable to yourself, that gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily a negative thing. Well, I really appreciate the two of you coming on the show today. I hope you had fun with this conversation.
So much fun. Thank you.
Todd, Natasha, hope maybe you'll come back sometime and we'll talk about something else. But thank you. And
love to.
Perfect. Cheers.
Cheers. Love life.
20 more reasons to choose the International College of the Cayman Islands in 20 seconds.
Small classes.
MBA.
Brain food. Skill.
Spirit. Radio station.
Mommy friendly.
No.
Art.
Tourism. HR. Fast track.
Espanol.
Faith campus.
Bold.
Free wireless. Progress.
Modern.
Study abroad.
Global thinking.
Hey, forget anything this time?
Internationally accredited.
Ready again?
Again.
Look! 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 Please look! Please look!
What's wrong with you? Can't you see I'm on the phone?
You wouldn't treat another person this way, yet children are treated like this every day. Children are people too. Let's work together to be better.
Thanks to Todd and Natasha for bringing their A game today. I'm sure you all enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Tune in again next week for part 2 of our discussion on modern relationships, where we'll be exploring, is marriage as we know it dead? I'm Dr. Babe, and you can interact with me on social media and tell me what's on your mind. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like me to explore, you can message me on any of the social media mediums. Thanks for watching us turn things up on Love Life.